Well, good morning, and welcome to, I think, quite a challenging topic. There are many societal taboos that get in the way of talking about some of the issues I'm going to raise today. And I think it's really interesting that so many of you are here to look at things that maybe many wouldn't simply discuss. We talk about adult toys. We mean sex toys, right? We're toys that people use for all sorts of interesting areas. Now, turning back the clock a bit, this concept of teledildonics. Wow, that's an unusual phrase, isn't it? That's what this talk is all about. But I didn't come up with that term. That was come up with in 1975 by a guy called Ted Nelson. You might have come across him. He's a writer and author. He also invented another phrase, which you do know, which was hypertext. But he also came up with that one. Now, before we start, this talk definitely contains some images. There is no nudity in this talk, but if you're going to be offended or upset by discussions of an intimate nature, this isn't the talk for you. It will be done in a very mature manner, I promise you, but please don't be offended. Before we start, though, I've spoken in the past a few times about cybersecurity and adult toys, and there are some perils of doing so. And one of the first things I strongly recommend is always check your bag if you're flying somewhere. Do not take a bag of adult toys in your carry-on luggage. I've had two very embarrassing moments. One in Oslo, when I was asked to give a briefing to the Norwegian government about connected devices and took some of these toys as an example. They got picked up on the security scanner, and a very young Norwegian security lady went very, very red when I opened my case. Awkward. Another one happened in Amsterdam. I'm so stupid. I was giving a talk. I came back through Amsterdam airport. My bag got pinged. And there's this very funny moment where I saw one of the security guards with a connected tea kettle of mine in one hand and a connected vibrator in the other hand. It's priceless. It's indelibly stamped upon my memory. Other crazy things you need to watch for is when you buy these devices online, they clearly set some sort of profile about you. I buy a lot of connected IoT smart devices for research. You get some really weird recommendations on Amazon when you combine that with buying adult toys. And there's another major problem as well. I've given a TED Talk about this subject, and it's the world's only R-rated TED Talk. YouTube decided they didn't like my content. That is my claim to fame. I've given the world's only R-rated TED Talk. But let's go mature. One of the things I think many people struggle with when discussing issues like this in the open is things surprise us. We discover things that we didn't know existed, and they confuse us and surprise us. Kinks are different things for different people, and I don't think it's fair or reasonable to kink shame people. As long as it's legal and consensual, just because it's surprising and unfamiliar to us, doesn't mean we shouldn't still have responsibility for making sure that people's very personal data is protected. So why did I go down this path? What took me there? Well, the first thing that started me off is things you're probably very familiar with and probably expected. The idea of connected pornography, immersive porn. I'm sure some of you have seen examples of cam modeling and even online sex parties. Things we probably expected. The first time I gave this talk, or something similar to it, I was really surprised though. A gentleman from the US military, a very senior gentleman, came to me and said, hey, those things are really, really popular in the military. And that triggered a whole set of investigations, realizing that actually in some cases military personnel are using these devices, so cybersecurity issues in them can cause all sorts of problems. So undoubtedly, connected adult toys have saved marriages. Why? Because personnel posted overseas can continue to have an intimate relationship. I'm sure we've also seen examples during COVID where isolation actually helped people's sense of living a fulfilled life using connected devices. There was a huge uptick in sales of these devices over the COVID lockdowns. But what goes wrong? Well, what about the risks to people? I'm often contacted by journalists investigating stories where people have been blackmailed, extorted, or in one case, a very sad case, where someone committed suicide because they'd been extorted, held ransom effectively, from security risks from adult toys. It's quite sobering, isn't it? And we see this time after time. We see poor security in adult toys actually lead to real physical harm. So what about where it actually got started? And this is where I've got my very dangerous bag here. And I would like to start with the very first. I'm afraid, as I did say, there is latex in this presentation. So this is the early Lovense. And the idea being is you would connect this to a cell phone app. You then had the other end, which your online partner would have, also connected to a smartphone app. And the idea being is you could connect to them and then have an intimate session online. We started looking at the cybersecurity. We started looking at the Android mobile app and realized there were a series of security flaws. It was actually creating temporary image files in SD card on Android, which was available to all apps. So already there was potential for people's very personal photographs and their sessions being accessible to other applications. And a very common theme you'll see through the talk is default Bluetooth pins that you couldn't change, which means that anyone in Bluetooth range could connect to it as long as they knew how to put in 4 zeros into their keypad. Really, really weak cybersecurity issues. The next crazy one. This is, he says, looking for it. Where have I put my smart? This is it. It's been reverse engineered a bit, so it's not quite the same anymore. This is the Lovense Hush. It's a smart butt plug. It has no pin at all. It's always in pairable modes unless it's connected to another device. And we were reading the FAQ, trying to learn a little bit more, and they said very clearly, they were clearly concerned about people's personal data. No data passes through our servers. We encrypt it everywhere, except we discovered that they didn't. A lot of the messages were unencrypted. That's not great. That's really not great. So, of course, we did the responsible and ethical thing, and we disclosed them. We said, hey, we found some security flaws in your devices. Can you fix them, please? Not very much happened for a little while. And they said, yeah, actually, we decided we're not going to fix that because we've got a new app. But we're not going to retire the old app. Why would you not retire your old app? 80% of your customers are using the new one. Why not just get rid of the old app? All the vulnerabilities have gone. No, they carried on. It took some time. We started going a bit further. So we spent a lot of our time looking at smart devices, IoT. That's our bag. So we were going to have some time to look at the firmware on it and see if we could pull more data from it and do some reverse engineering. And then by some fluke, another rather cool researcher did a paper and discovered he could get code execution on the butt plug, which actually started some really interesting thought processes. So the concept of holding a butt plug ransom, could you do that? Could you have a ransomware running on a butt plug? Well, it turns out you can. They also speculated you could cause the batteries in it to overheat, so you could cause physical damage and harm, or even use it for doing some quite scary things. That started a series of thoughts, which I'll go on to in a minute. Further issues. Another cool researcher discovered a cross-site scripting bug in one of the Chrome plugins that the CAM models would use, and you could easily cause a denial of service attack, so knocking the CAM offline, or you could also, as long as you could enumerate their username, you could also then pop their system remotely. Not good, right? We also discovered you could take control of their device remotely through the API. This is getting mad now. So this is more recent. We also discovered the ability to remotely hijack someone's adult toy. Now, depending on which version of the app you were using, if it was iPhone, you had to be on the same network, so the same home. So pretty low risk. But the Android version of the application, we realized you could hijack someone's session and their toy remotely from anywhere in the world. That's nuts. Utterly crazy, right? It got a bit more scary as well. And this is where it starts leaking into really personal matters. When you used that smartphone app, even if you weren't connected to the toy, if you used that smartphone app and then went to your place of work and left Wi-Fi on, the app will continually ping outbound. So that device you used at home, you've now taken it to your employer, you've connected to their Wi-Fi, because that's what you do with your cell phone, right? It's pinging outbound. So your employer will be able to see the fact your phone is making requests to a smart adult toy server. That's going to be awkward, isn't it? So you discover that one of your employees is also potentially a CAM model on the side. Is it reasonable at that point to terminate that employee? Do you have policy in your organization for dealing with those scenarios? Awkward discussion, isn't it? Something someone's doing in their personal time causes an outbound request that your firewalls pick up and go, why is there someone requesting a server for a smart adult toy? Wouldn't really take very much to go further. Something to think about there, hey? Another crazy one. This is the Kiru Onyx. It's fleshlight in quotes, I suppose. Again, a static Bluetooth pin. It's always in pairing mode. So as long as you're in Bluetooth range, anyone can connect to it. It even sends a link with a static ID in it, which if you can intercept that, you can access someone else's device. Another crazy one, static Bluetooth pins, the Lilo. But this is where it gets a bit crazy, and this is a problem that I don't think is resolvable. So, I was going to say get your smartphone out, but actually one of the devices I was planning to use is broken at the moment. All of these devices have Bluetooth advertising IDs, the Bluetooth name, or in some cases, a Wi-Fi connection. And by knowing that SSID, all that Bluetooth advertising ID, you know that someone's got a connected adult toy. Now, why is that a risk? Well, it means that anyone in Bluetooth or Wi-Fi range can see you've got an adult toy. It means your neighbors can see that Bluetooth broadcast. They know you've got an adult toy. The next door apartment, they know you've got an adult toy. Now, you may be fine with that, but were you aware of it? Do you understand the risks? Everyone else in your house see that Bluetooth ID. Your family will know you had one. All you have to do is have a list of IDs, and there they are. Work through, and you can see the Bluetooth IDs of all of these connected devices. So, for example, that Bluetooth ID is that butt plug. So if you see that ID somewhere, you know someone near you has got a connected butt plug. Which led us on to something even more crazy. This is one of my colleagues. One of my wonderful colleagues, a guy called Alex Lomas, was out in Berlin and realized this vulnerability. He said, well, hang on a minute. By walking around, I can see pings from these Bluetooth advertising IDs from these adult toys. Now, those of you might remember, do you remember war driving? So you'd go and look for wireless access points. And Alex realized that this was a very similar principle and came up with the term screw driving. Great guy, great sense of humor. But it does really make you think. People know things about us that we're not expecting. You might be fine, everyone knowing that you've got a particular smart adult toy at home or wherever. You might not be. You might not want that to happen. Resolving that is a major, major problem. It's almost impossible to stop the Bluetooth advertising ID from being broadcast. You'd have to root the device and completely modify it. But yet, the vendors don't think about this. They just create their devices. There has been some legal action. This was a few years ago now. A vendor called WeVibe, with the WeConnect app, they were collecting more data than their terms and conditions suggested. Now, I think the reason they were doing it is for understanding how their products were being used so they could improve their products over time. But they violated their own terms and conditions, and there was a class action that resulted in a settlement of nearly $4 million. But they still collect some location data. I think that's really worrying. Vendors, manufacturers of the devices, collecting data that is really, really personal and private. Now, so far, I've only talked about devices that you could maybe hijack and take control of. So you make it buzz, you make it not buzz. So what? But then things started getting really quite scary. This is probably the most concerned I've ever been, and this is a very bizarre device. This is a vibrator camera endoscope. Yes, that's what I said. When I saw it advertised, I was like, oh, I've got to have that. I've got to screw up my Amazon recommendations a bit more. It's got a camera in the end. So it's not just buzzy, not buzzy. It's actually got footage in there. And my colleague, Andrew Tierney, Cyber Gibbons on Twitter, really worth following, interesting guy, started looking at this device together with me. And we started looking at how it connected. And the first thing it did, it was weird. It's an access point. It's a Wi-Fi access point. That's unusual. Most smart devices are wireless clients, but this is actually a wireless access point. So the first thing you have a problem with, it's got an SSID, which means you can use tools like Wiggle to geolocate them. So you can actually go and search for the See Me, just pop it into Wiggle, and you'll get the GPS locations of where they've been seen recently. So right down to house location, really, really precise GPS data. So we got hold of the Android application that works alongside it and started looking at how it operates. When we reverse engineered it, we started discovering references in the code to propeller speed and realized, where's the propeller? I don't know. We realized they'd reused some code from a drone. Now, I got in touch with this vendor, SkyViper, and I asked them, did you know that some of your code is inside a camera dildo? And they said, no, we didn't. Now we do. What do we do with that? The pre-shared key for the wireless access point was 8/8, and it didn't seem that you could change it either. So you now had the GPS location and the pre-shared key to go and compromise that device. But it got worse. I didn't think it'd get much worse. So we could connect to it. Now looking at the code, we realized, hang on a minute, so the username is admin and the password is blank and you can't change it. So we connected to the onboard web server and authenticated to it and could see what was going on the camera. So from anywhere within Wi-Fi range, you could see what was going on the camera. Now, there's a difference between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi in adult toys. Bluetooth typically only supports one connection, so you can only have one toy, one smartphone. You can't have multiple connections. So if you're connected, someone else can't. Wi-Fi is different. It supports multiple clients at the same time, so you could easily see what was going on with the valid user using it at the same time. So that was quite worrying. That's just some network cabling. So anyway, so this led to a career crowning moment. Years of experience, 26 years in cybersecurity, and the peak of my career was getting a persistent root shell on a dildo. Anyway, so this is when things started going a bit crazy. Do you remember I said they reused the code from that drone, which had a lot of extra functionality? So it didn't just have camera functions, it had a lot of other things in it. It had a lot of functionality. So my colleague Andrew started spending some time working through it, realized there were some problems, realized there was potential for an exploit, so thought, okay, let's get the firmware. Looks like it was made in the Far East. Couldn't get the firmware from their website. Realized you could re-enable the Telnet daemon with a simple web request, then connect it over Telnet. Actually had vulnerabilities very similar to the ones that were exploited by the Mirai worm. Couldn't get in. We were really struggling to actually go further. So, right, next thing to do is let's get the firmware off physically. So let's connect to it, connected to with a bus pirate. Took about 30 minutes to get the firmware off it. Couldn't get the etc password files, but also did find an injection point. And at that point, whereas we could echo the content, we could get the file system, and then we got etc password, but we couldn't crack that particular password. But it didn't matter. Needed to get root. Because we were root already, as a web app, we just wrote a new user into etc password. We now knew the root user password. Now we are root on the toy. Actually, once we got there, we could then drop the password file, and the root password was recam4debug, which I guess we probably could have worked out. But yes, we got a persistent root shell on an endoscope camera dildo. Well, yeah, top of my career that was. But it's not just about adult toys that leak data. There are others as well. And this is a piece of research that my colleagues Alan Money and Alex Lomas did together. And they started looking at some of the many hookup apps out there. Now, you might remember some of them. So one of the most popular ones is Grindr, obviously. It's had lots of problems over the years. It gradually gets better. But they looked at some others. Recon, Romeo, and also ThreeFun, which is a threesomes hookup app. Okay, so first problem, major problem, was the concept of trilateration. Grindr have had many problems with this over the years. The point being is if you can access the API, you can put in, where am I? So it will tell you how far away someone is. So, oh, yeah, hey, you're 2 miles away, so you could do your hookup. But you could rewrite where you were. You could change your GPS coordinate and submit it to the API. And simply by popping in 3 different points, you could trilaterate and work out exactly where the other party was. So something like 8 points of GPS precision in some cases. So you've got very, very specific location data for people who were interested in doing something online. Now, what's also interesting is some of those apps appeal to very specific user groups, people with specific vulnerabilities in certain cases. And there's been a number of vulnerabilities that have been exposed in Grindr and others, attacks against people, beating up people with certain kinks, even in the West. But things get really scary when those apps start to be used in nation states where certain sexual preferences are illegal. And a great example of that was people's very precise GPS location exposed in states that don't tolerate homosexuality, for example. We looked with a journalist at a very similar app in Egypt, and there was documentary evidence that the police had been using vulnerabilities to pinpoint gay men and then persecute them. It's quite sobering, isn't it? Pretty horrible. ThreeFun, the threesomes hookup app, found some vulnerabilities, told ThreeFun about them, and just about nothing happened. It was a proper dumpster fire of vulnerability disclosure. It was awful. But to give you an idea, you could pull down from their API, without further authorization, a huge amount of very, very personal data. We actually chose a photograph of one of the user's profile pictures and redacted it, which is quite scary, how much information was being leaked about people online. RSA asked me to take that photograph off, though. Fair enough. What should we be doing, though? How should we enable people to hook up, if that's their thing, in a safe and secure manner without exposing very, very precise GPS data? Well, simply, you snap to a grid. So you don't give an exact GPS location. You say, hey, I'm in this 1 square mile of space. Great. No particular problem. You can't trilaterate. You can't extract that precise GPS location. But I think it's really important we think very, very carefully about the sort of data these apps are leaking about us and the people who use them. Now, the last place I really want to look into is something that surprised the heck out of me. Do you remember with the butt plug, the researcher at DEF CON talked about the concept of ransomware on a butt plug? Now, how can you hold a butt plug ransom? It just doesn't work, right? You have to pay your Bitcoin to make it work again. So what? Throw it away, get a new one. And then we discovered one of the most interesting devices I think I've ever looked at, and that's in here. It is a male chastity cage. Yeah, I've got it here. I'll sometimes do this with a carrot, but that's another story. It clips on, and then this shackle goes in and makes sure that it doesn't. Remember I said we don't shame kinks. This is cool for some people, and that's fine. If that's their thing, that's absolutely fine. But they should be able to do this without fear of their personal data being exposed. But actually, it got quite a bit worse. So it clips in. The way that it works is that you connect to a mobile app, and in order to unlock it, it has a digital key. Remember I talked about the concept of a chastity cage? Well, the mobile app allows you to send that digital key to somebody else. So they then have control over you. Remember, we don't shame kinks. It's what some people want to do, and that's absolutely fine. However, we started looking at this device and discovered that not only could the digital key be sent to someone else, we could actually effectively delete that key or take control of it, which meant that the gentleman was then permanently locked into the cage. Yeah, this is hardened steel. You're going to need an angle grinder to get this off. You're in for a period of time. We did, however, before we published this vulnerability, also found a way to unlock it in the event that someone was trapped in. You actually have to prise open this point, and then you can get a battery and drive the motor that unlocks it manually. Yeah, kind of awkward. But we did what we feel was the right thing. We told the vendor about it, and they said, we don't have any money. I was like, we don't want your money. We just want you to fix the vulnerability. Yeah, but we don't have any money to fix the vulnerability. So, okay, do you think it might be a good idea maybe to warn your users and perhaps withdraw the product because people risk being trapped in? And they said, no, we don't have any money because we're developing new things all the time. It's like, well, don't you think perhaps you ought to really think carefully about what you're spending your money on? And they declined to fix the vulnerability. And it turns out they were investing really heavily in this, which is their next version, the Cellmate 2. And this one not only can lock you in, but it also has electrodes in here where you can give the wearer a shock. And it just really worries me. Where are their priorities? Were they about looking after their consumers, their customers, or were they about just getting new product out to market? And that I find really worrying because similar vulnerability now gets you locked in and you can shock the individual as well. Mad. So how do we make change? Well, I think as an industry, we have to be prepared to try and get over some of our social hang-ups about this. People don't want to talk about it, and I understand why we do that. But as a result, there's very little attention paid to this area of cybersecurity. We find these things funny and surprising. Why? Because we're a bit uncomfortable about it, maybe. It's not something we're familiar with. We're surprised that some of these kinks exist, but that's fine. We see vulnerabilities that were fixed in smart devices generally years ago. And we laugh. And I think that's a natural human reaction. We're confused, we're surprised, we don't understand, we're a bit blown away, we don't understand what's going on. But those aren't my words. They're the words of another cybersecurity researcher who goes by the Twitter handle Internet of Dongs, which is quite an interesting Twitter account, but he does amazing work helping organizations improve the cybersecurity of their adult toys. Even the most basic cybersecurity things were missing. They were missing SSL. They were missing pinning and key storage and all the basics. But do you know what I think we can all do? I think we can all spend a little bit of time maybe looking at our adult toys, maybe buying things that are going to really mess up our Amazon recommendations a little bit more. But there is good news. There is regulation coming. There are a few examples, actually. So in the UK, we had the Product Security Telecommunications Infrastructure Bill, went into law on Monday last week, which is great, and it makes basic cybersecurity standards mandatory, and it's been followed up by the IoT Cybersecurity Improvement Act over here, and also the EU Cybersecurity Act is coming as well. So there is progress, which is really good. But, and there's a big but here, regulation's great, but if no one stands up and makes a complaint, regulation's pointless. We as consumers have to be prepared to stand up and complain. And that's where our societal taboos get in the way, because we don't want to be the one that goes, hey, I've got an adult toy, and it's got cybersecurity problems. We struggle with that. And I think that's really important. We need to get over our hang-ups and our taboos in the interests of making cybersecurity better for everybody, so we don't end up with these crazy situations where really vulnerable smart toys are allowed to be sold on the market. We need to complain for action to be taken. So what can we take from this? I think as an employer, we need to acknowledge, do you know what? Our staff use these things. They might not be familiar to us, it might not be our thing, but someone in our team undoubtedly uses some of these devices. And if we punish that or make it a taboo, that activity goes underground. Better to talk about it If that's driven underground and there are vulnerabilities found, our staff members are vulnerable to extortion and blackmail. That's not good. You might consider smart devices as part of your general cybersecurity awareness. I know this is going a bit out there, but you'll find an incredibly engaging way of entertaining and informing your teams. Do I suggest you go and wave around an 8-inch latex pink thing? No, but I do think there's a lot to be said for engaging with our teams about the cybersecurity of these devices. Maybe consider it for your next awareness session. And for you, people use these things. Whether we are comfortable with it or not, it happens. And because we have hang-ups, because we don't like talking about these things, the vendors, I believe, pay lip service to cybersecurity, as a result of which we are all exposed. There are laws coming, which is great, but if we don't shout out and make people hear, make those enforcement actions happen, nothing is going to change. But anyway, that is me. I hope you found it informative. There is a lot more on our blog. I promise you it's suitable for work. Not going to get in trouble. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we do talk about these things from time to time, as well as lots more in the field of IoT and connected device cybersecurity. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ken. We have microphones out on the floor. If any questions from Internet of Things perspective? Yes, sir.
It's not really a question. Great to hear another British accent out here. I didn't realise PTP was a British company. I will never look at Alex and Andrew in the same light again. I've just spent nearly 2 weeks on a ship with Alex. I think you know which one. It's a really, really good presentation, but I like how you draw out the personal risk aspect. 30 years in the military, the last time I had to present a risk-based discussion like this was around the use of fitness apps where I could track individuals in places where we didn't necessarily want to disclose where they were. This is another good thing, because I still have a reserve hat, which again, if you're going to use these things, be aware that you might not be the only person aware of that, or your position could be triangulated. It's a really interesting way of putting it out. So really important, thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
I've actually got like 3 questions.
Oh my.
I know. Okay. One, did you tell the ER at least how to remove that gadget if it's stuck?
Yes, there are a few ways. We put a little how-to on our website as well. You can also get a very large screwdriver, a really big one, but
Okay.
yeah, high-risk strategy.
Okay. I used to watch that show, Sex Sent Me to the ER, and he had some weird. Okay. Number 2. For the shared keys, did you check if they were revocable? Like for the ones where you shared a key with someone for them to be able to connect to you? What if you broke up? Does that mean you're forever connected?
Yes, there was an ability to revoke that already in the application, which is a good sign, but they hadn't really thought about what if you could just delete the keys or prevent the user unlocking. So yes, you could revoke the key, as I recall.
Okay, and then the last one, what are the legal ramifications for someone who's hacking another person's toy?
What are the...
The legal ramifications, like are you considered a rapist if you hijack someone else's toy that is in use?
So this subject has been touched on in the past about does hijacking someone's smart sex toy count as a privacy violation or even rape? And I don't think any lawyers really got to a conclusion on that. It seems very violating to me. But I don't think that our current legal statutes can cope with the concept of non-physical connected rape, for want of a better word. Yeah, so I think there's a lot to come, needs to be done in the legal area right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if anyone's got a question they'd rather not shout it out, please do catch me outside. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's give it up for Ken, Pentest Partners, and thank you for the suitable for work references.